Please, won't you be seated? So in all of these texts that we heard today, I see a theme, which is, how is it that you recognize the holy when it is in your midst? What does it take to name it and claim it, even if the rest of the world does not see it, dismisses it, and you? Maybe it can only be the ones who are on the margins, or dismissed as unimportant, or considered powerless, who can actually see. In the first scripture that we heard today from Exodus, they seem to explore this. In the time of Moses, all the Israelites were considered lesser, but women would have been even more invisible. Whether Egyptian or Israelite or Canaanite, they were behind the scenes, they had no earthly power. And we don't know of them having some kind of bold woman network for planning together, a hotline of some sort that would have helped them create a plan to do something brave, a work that would bring a great prophet to live, to become who God called him to be. And yet, they did. And in a way, they were part of Moses, these 5 women, and he stood on their shoulders. We'll come back to them in a minute. In the letter to the Romans, Paul is clearly suggesting that there's a humble role for each of us in the bringing about of the holy in our world. We each bring different talents and gifts, like stations on a train connecting the tracks to the holy. Do we prophesy? Does someone else teach? Another exhorts, another gives, another leads, and maybe some are quietly compassionate, even cheerful, Paul says. Maybe we are the midwives who refuse to stop a new life. Maybe one of us will be a mother who wants to save her child, and another, a sibling who protects him with the help of her own enemies. Maybe we are the foreigner who dares to raise up a new life and give it a name. And what would bridge the different parts like this? Was there something about this child that it felt special, marked, different, somehow destined for greatness? Did each woman in our first text see it? In our gospel this morning, when Jesus says to the apostles, "Who do the people say that the Son of Man is?" he's testing what they see. How does Peter know to give the right answer? He says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus says, "Flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven." So maybe it is those who, like Peter, make mistakes, have times of doubt, are a simple man. Maybe it is those with the courage to believe that the impossible can be possible. Maybe these are the ones who can change the world. A number of years ago, I heard a story of this kind of courage. It takes place between 2 women connected to a man they both love, somewhat similar to the story of Moses we heard in the scripture today. The man is an Israeli peacemaker and scholar, Yakir Englander, someone I have met in my interfaith work for the United Church of Christ at the regional level. And this is a story he told to me a number of years ago. The first woman is a Hasidic Israeli. She is the daughter of Holocaust survivors, and her mother and father were forced to watch the Nazis hang her parents in Auschwitz and bash in their newborn son's head. Her mother could never hang laundry again because of the images it evoked of her parents hanging. And she could never hug her daughter, the Israeli woman in our story. The other woman is a Muslim Palestinian, the director for the Kids for Peace program that works around the world, but especially in the Holy Land, to bring together youth of war-torn areas and build bridges between them to help them rewrite the narratives of hate among their peoples. Every day, the Muslim Palestinian woman suffers from poverty, violence, and the shame of living in the occupied territories as a Palestinian. On this day, the 2 women came together at an awards dinner for the man they both loved, Yakir. He is a colleague of the Muslim woman and the son of the Israeli woman. When the Israeli woman arrived at the awards evening, she sat as far away as she could from the Palestinians. But after hearing Yakir's talk about how his Hasidic Jewish faith is what gives him the passion for peacemaking, his mother decided to come over and meet his Palestinian friends. The Muslim woman, dressed in hijab, the head covering of a faithful Muslim, she came over and she hugged Yakir's mother. Now, Yakir describes watching his mother's face become totally blanched, since subconsciously she was sure that the Muslim woman who was hugging her was about to put a knife in her back. When she realized that she had simply gotten a warm hug, she had tears streaming down her face. Remember, she had never been hugged by her mother as a child. The Muslim woman said to her that Yakir was like a brother to her. So the Israeli woman replied, "This means you are also my child." Months later, at a family Shabbat dinner, one of Yakir's relatives spoke bad words about dirty Arabs. And Yakir's mother pounded the table at the dinner and started shouting at him, "How dare you? Don't you believe that they too have the image of God? Did you ever speak to a Palestinian? I hugged one with my own body, and how many lies I suddenly realized I have been told all my life." This, the result of one hug by a Muslim Palestinian woman to an Israeli woman, the child of the Holocaust. And this is what it looks like when God's kingdom is breaking in. Two women of enemy sides who knew something special about a man they both loved, and the holy happened there. It takes incredible courage to work against the forces of the world that raise us believing that we are too small to do anything about the wrongs in our world, that teach us that peace can never come, that justice can never win. Sometimes, maybe just loving one other person is the place to start. So now I want to take a closer look at the women in our Exodus story today. When the text opens, you remember there is a powerful edict in the land proclaimed by Pharaoh that all male Israelite children should be killed at birth. Laverne McCain Gill writes this: "Although the Pharaoh made the labor of the Israelites unbearable, the oppression was not enough to assuage his fear. He decided to limit the population growth by killing the male infants. Facing oppression, the Israelites cried out to God, and God heard them. God came in an unexpected way, using a diverse collection of women who came together in an unexpected way to fulfill God's liberation. This intergenerational, interfaith, interracial group of women came together, creating what she calls the Moses event. So here they are, the first two women in our story, Shiphrah and Puah, the midwives, who so creatively disobeyed. We don't know if they're Israelite or Egyptian, or some mix perhaps. Drora O'Donnell Settle describes these two. She says, "As those who aid birth, they are the first to assist in the birth of the Israelite nation. Their work entails an understanding of the connection between transformation and risk. And then there are more women. It's not enough that Moses survived his birth. In our text, the other three women are not named, but elsewhere in the Bible, it identifies Moses' mother as Jochebed and his sister as Miriam. Settle tells us more about Pharaoh's daughter. Moses' adoptive daughter is never named, which is ironic since she is the one who names him. She serves as the symmetrical counterpart of the woman who gives birth to the child and places him in the water, and then she draws him up and raises him as hers. Surely Pharaoh's daughter knew she was drawing out of the water an Israelite baby boy, one decreed to be killed. And when young Miriam, his sister, approaches to offer a wet nurse, how convenient. I can see Pharaoh's daughter and Miriam doing a nod, nod, wink, wink, sort of a conspiracy. Pharaoh's daughter would have known she was conspiring across religious and ethnic lines, circumventing her powerful father by doing this. No one woman in this story could have saved Moses' life alone. It was only because they worked together, one woman's decision at a time, each one trusting that something greater was at work than their one small act. Each woman in this story literally risked her life to do this. What difference could they possibly have thought that saving the life of one boy could make? And yet, of course, we know that Moses would grow up to be the greatest prophet in the Hebrew Bible, the one who liberates the Israelites from slavery and brings them to the promised land. Have you ever seen the bumper sticker that says, "Well-behaved women rarely make history"? Well, surely that could be said of these women. What courage it takes. And this is also true of so many more women of history, others whose names are rarely remembered, whose stories didn't make it into our history books. Let's hear about some of them with your help. So I want to start with those up here who have a scripture. Jerry, you have one. Will you turn on your mic and make sure to speak?
Nahid, N-A-H-E-E-D, a schoolgirl in Afghanistan. She led a demonstration against the Soviet invasion of her country. In 1980 it was. And she was one of 70 children, unfortunately, being massacred.
That's right.
Nahid.
Judith, will you try from your mic there?
Malala Yousafzai, who became an international symbol for the fight for girls' education after she was shot in 2012 for oppressing Taliban restrictions on female education in her home country of Pakistan. She won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014 at the age of 17 and is still a force for the education of women and girls globally today.
For Betty Williams and Mairead Corrigan, who organized the People's Movement for Peace in Northern Ireland in 1976 and were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
Maria Jesus Alvarado Rivera, who initiated the feminist movement in Peru at the turn of the century, a women's rights activist who was in prison and eventually exiled.
Raiden Ajeng Kartini, who initiated the feminist movement in Indonesia at the turn of the century. Outspoken against social and colonial oppression, she started a successful school for girls and died in childbirth at age of 25.
Zhu Jin, revolutionary feminist, poet, teacher in China, executed in 1908 for refusing to compromise her beliefs.
Pandita Ramabai, a Sanskrit scholar who challenged interpretations of Hindu law in order to raise the status of women, delegate to the Indian National Congress in 1889.
Did I miss anyone? I think everyone has read their parts. Okay.
Right over here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Make sure that's still working. Yeah, I think it's on.
Stand up.
Yeah, if you can.
Kanhumu, first female ruler in the landmaker of Hawaii in the early 19th century, who abolished receptive practices of taboos against women, established women's right to education.
Thank you. And I would be remiss not to mention Greta Thunberg, who 5 years ago on August 20th refused to attend the first day of school so she could sit in front of the Swedish Parliament's main building with a sign that read, "Skolstrejk for klimatet," which means school strike for climate. Thunberg explained her action this way. She said, "I am doing this because nobody is doing anything. It is my moral responsibility to do what I can." So coming back to the two women and the man I started my sermon with, the Muslim Palestinian woman and the Israeli Hasidic woman. And the man they both loved, Yakir. Right before, I will just say before I say that, they are part of this movement that has been going on probably since many of us in here, all of our lives have been alive since the early 19th century, the struggle for peace in the Middle East. If you talk to most Israelis and Palestinians, they cannot imagine a world in which all can live together in peace. But these two women can, and Yakir can. And after this awards dinner happened that I told you about, I talked with Yakir. He was going back to Israel, taking a new position for this group Kids for Peace, this program that I told you about in Jerusalem and in other parts of the world that brings together the youth of different religions and empowers them to be the agents of change in their schools and their communities, to imagine being friends with their enemies and live it. And as he prepared to head back, Yakir told me that this was the riskiest job he'd ever taken. But he said, "I cannot live in any other way, even if all I am working for is impossible." He told me, when I served in the Israeli military, it was my job to bring the dead bodies off the field. I carried them in my arms, both Israelis and Palestinians, and it changed my life forever. I am still carrying them both today, and I do this for both of them. So these are the stories we must tell and keep telling. We must name the nameless heroes, all of them, from ancient times to current times. We must look for them among us and celebrate them because they are all around us. Some of them are right in here at Christ Church Cathedral today. They are the ones who can inspire us to never give up, to never think that peace is not possible, that love cannot win. It is our scriptures and our faith that teach us this is God's dream for the world, one woman at a time, one man at a time, one human being at a time. It may take 5 of us, or 10 of us, or maybe 3 million, or maybe the whole world. But together, we can do it. Amen.